Okay.
Oh, and April is there.
Yes, April.
Okay, I'm going to give a minute for everyone to join.
So we'll have 3 groups if there are 14.
Okay.
You know, we could
So
have
the 14 includes us.
Oh, it does. Oh, okay.
Mhm.
So then it's 12. So we could we could have 3 groups of 4.
Okay.
You know,
Okay.
well, we'll see because it's
Yeah, people are going to continue coming in. Welcome, everyone. We're waiting. We have a few more people entering, so we're going to wait just a minute or 2 more. Okay, here they come. Okay. All right, very well. I'm going to go ahead and start. I'd like to welcome everyone to our presentation today. We appreciate you coming and we hope you enjoy the presentation. Our presenter is Marcy Delcourt. Dr. Delcourt enjoys presenting and writing about how to encourage creative behaviors in youths and adults. Her presentations and research include creative problem solving and problem solving style. Currently, she is a professor in the Department of Education and Educational Psychology at Western Connecticut State University, where she coordinates a doctoral program in instructional leadership. She also serves as a member of the advisory board for the Connecticut Association for the Gifted and has a long-standing research commitment to instructional needs of gifted students, social and emotional learning, fostering creativity, and the uses of technology in education. Welcome, everyone. Welcome, Marcy, to our session today.
Thanks, Debbie. And I'm so glad that we're able to hold the conference this way. It's wonderful to be trailblazers in the first virtual conference for FPSPI. And so as Debbie said, we're going to be looking at problem solvers as leaders and how this is instigated with an approach to teamwork. I was introduced, so my name is Marcy Delcourt. If you want to jot down ways to contact me, you can see right here at delcourtm@wcsu.edu or Marcy with a Y, delcourt@gmail.com. And I have worked with a colleague of mine, Laura Main, to present, to investigate information that I'm going to be presenting today. And first, I'm going to tell you about a project that we worked on to improve problem solving for students in the FPSPI program. And then I'm going to take a piece of that and have you experience what it is like to be involved in the project that we instituted. But first, I'm going to say, I want to know a little bit about you. And one of the things I want to tell you is the 4 ways that we're going to communicate today. And one is through polls. Debbie's going to be in charge of that. And I've left up on screens information about the polls that we're going to be using, but Debbie's going to show you in a moment the poll that is, the 2 polls that are available here. Another thing that we're going to do is I will have sections in the slides in the presentation where you can ask questions. And you can go into your chat area and ask a question, and I'll try to respond to as many as possible. The other way that we're going to communicate is we'll have breakout rooms. Towards the end, we'll have an activity, and you'll be put into breakout rooms just arbitrarily. Debbie already has that set up with 4 or 5 people in a room. And then when you report about what's going on in your breakout room, you'll have the opportunity to unmute if you're the spokesperson for your group, and tell us what was going on with your group. So those are our 4 main ways that we'll communicate. But I'd like to know a little bit about you and who's here. So Debbie's going to put up the first poll about what's your role. And these are just general categories, and you might be all the above, some of the above, etc. So if you could just click on the area that best represents you. Oh, well, all right. So we have some in the, we have a little bit of everybody, some of the above, all of the above. We just have, as you can see on the screen, 2 parents, 1 teacher, 3 coaches, etc. And the most popular area was that you probably have multiple roles being here. So I'm going to stop sharing this this particular poll and go on to the next one, because I want to know a little bit more about you as well. So I'm going to close, oops, share results. We've done that, and stop sharing. Oh, sorry, up here. Thank you for your patience. And then the second poll is, well, what age level of student are you working with? And it might be multiple ages. So please take a moment and just let me know who you're working with. Okay, I see that we've got, again, a variety. One of the things I do want to let you know in advance is I'm going to be talking about an instrument today that we used, and it was part of a program we instituted. It is for age levels 10 or 11 and above. So that's why I wanted to check on the elementary school in particular to see how many people were here. So I'm going to end this poll. It just gives us an idea of who's in the audience, who's tuning in. And then I'm going to go on and explain what we were, what Laura and I did. And so I'm going to begin with the what ingredient. And so when we do things with problem solving, as you know, since you're involved with FPSPI, when you say problem solving, some people think about the scientific method. And this is different from creative problem solving, which is the focus of future problem solving. So FPS uses CPS. And then I'm going to explain in much more detail what problem solving style is. And that really means, how do you approach a problem? And then we'll be talking about creative ability. And in this case, for a project we did, Laura and I measured verbal divergent thinking, which includes the areas of fluency, flexibility, originality, and elaboration, with fluency being number of ideas, flexibility being the numbers of categories of ideas, originality being the uniqueness, and elaboration means embellishment upon ideas. So typically when you see problem solving, people think of the scientific method. You ask a question, you do background research, you construct a hypothesis, you test it, etc. And it's pretty much a linear orientation. And it seems to be that each one of these steps are fairly easy because there's just one concept there. You ask a question. Well, we know that when you do creative problem solving, it takes a long time to get oriented to understanding the problem and asking a question. And so it's organized in this manner to think about, you have to, takes a lot of time to understand the problem, get ideas generated, and then plan for action. On the left-hand side of this slide, you see that there's divergent thinking. You come up with a lot of ideas, and then you converge, which we don't really get a sense of when we look at this kind of model. So when we talk to others about problem solving, they're often thinking of this model, and we're thinking of this model because CPS is used with FPSPI. And for those of you obviously involved with this, you can see this as the steps for the scoring. So what else? When you work on teams, you have to learn how to collaborate. And you have to be patient with those who you collaborate with. We know that sometimes students in FPS even switch teams throughout the year because they find that they want to work with others who are more, let's say, more positive about their perspectives and points of view. And in our particular project, we focused on global issues problem solving. And I'm just going to give you some information now about a little more about what we did. So we understand that collaboration and collaborative thinking is very important in the problem solving process. And students who receive training in personality type, or how do you approach a problem, outperform their peers in academic performance, communication skills, and other skills. So what we found is that we have worked to improve CPS over time, but we could improve now. We can improve the way we work in groups. And that is what we did in our project. We could improve outcomes by enhancing the group problem solving process. So our big question became, how do group training activities and problem solving style affect performance in a future problem solving program? We had one suburban high school available to us with about 1,200 students. About 7% of that number were in the program for the gifted in that high school. And their program, their curriculum was FPS. And it became a course in their curriculum. It was something that was built into their schedule, which is really nice that this high school viewed this that way. We asked all 81 students to be involved in our project. 71 consented. And there was one coach, and these 75 students made up 21 different teams. So what we did with the treatment group is we trained them in how they approach a problem. We trained them in how do you think about problem solving and what do you naturally do as part of your personality to solve a problem. And then we had, so all the students were involved in FPSPI in the GIPS, but the treatment group received very specific training, whereas the comparison group had no problem solving style training. So here's a look at our teams. An important part here is the number of years in FPSPI. There made no difference to the students. In other words, there was no significant difference with having been involved in FPS for 3.4 years or 3.57 years. We divided our teams into our study. We had the 9th and the 11th graders in the treatment group and the 10th and 12th graders in the comparison group. So what we did is we used the GIPS PP2 as our pre-test, as a baseline, because the PP1 is just getting back into the groove at the beginning of the year and students aren't quite ready. You know, they're just getting used to the concept. So we used PP2 as the pretest, and there was no significant difference between the treatment and comparison group at that time. And we used the qualifying problem as the post-test. So we also wanted to be sure that the groups weren't different according to their creative ability. So we gave them the Torrance test of creative thinking and found that there was no significant difference between groups. So one group was not inherently somehow or other more creative than the other. And then, as I mentioned, for the treatment group, we gave them VIEW, an assessment of problem-solving style, and then trained them in how to use VIEW in groups. So the instruments were, as I just explained, the GIPS, PP2, and QP. We had the topics of robotics for the PP2 and megacities for the QP. And we had independent raters at the state level, and they were blind to the fact that students were in any type of study. So then we had the instrument of the Torrance test of creative thinking, the verbal instrument. If you're not familiar with that, students are given prompts and then they're given a picture and they have to ask questions about the picture. They're given another stimulus and they give causes, potential causes. So it's a lot of writing, but very similar to completing the FPS booklet, because you're writing information. So they guessed consequences, and you can read the other areas that that are on this particular instrument. And there was, as I told you, no significant difference between the groups. So VIEW, an assessment of problem-solving style, has 3 dimensions. And students are assessed on, or whoever takes the instrument is assessed on, their orientation to change, how easily they change things or how they look at developing information. And the 2 components of that are to be an explorer or developer. And I'll be explaining those in more detail, and you can apply them to yourselves. Another dimension is manner of processing, and another one is ways of deciding. How do I decide what steps to take? There are 34 items on a 4-point scale. So we took a 9-week period between doing the PP2 and doing the QP problem, and gave students introductory information about VIEW and very particular activities about how do you use VIEW, how do you understand it when you work in groups, and also gave group training activities for 25% of every class time when the students met together with their coach. The results were quite positive. The treatment group, for the 9th graders, 75% went on to qualify for the state competition, 100% of the 11th graders, and fewer, as you can see here, only 17% of the 10th graders and 67% of the 12th graders. One of the treatment group teams went on to the international competition and placed 6th. So this was very positive. We've never even gotten a group to get to the international competition. Here are some numbers just to state that we really did our due diligence and found no significant difference in the PP2 scores. We found significant difference in the qualifying project scores. There was a difference, for instance, between a score of 115 and 105, no difference in the years in FPSPI, and no difference in any of these areas of the Torrance test, the measures of fluency, flexibility, or originality. So do you have any questions now just about what we did and what the project was that we did to enhance? I'm going to be giving you more specific information about how we actually enhance students' understanding of working in groups. But do you have any questions at this time? You could go into the chat area. And okay, so I see no questions right now, so I'm going to go on to getting into exactly what is VIEW. And there we go. So what does view assess? As I had indicated when I mentioned what the instrument is about, there's an area called orientation to change, a dimension called manner of processing, and one called ways of deciding. So orientation to change is your preference for responding to and managing structure, novelty, and authority when dealing with change or solving problems. And there are two main components, being an explorer or being a developer. Explorers prefer to do things differently. They view structure as limiting or confining. They challenge the problem definition. They challenge authority. They like to bend rules. They prefer not to have rules if possible. They like to be seen as being ingenious or unconventional, and they emphasize originality and uniqueness. They're the ones who come up with a lot of ideas, and then other people in the group sometimes say, okay, stop now, that's enough. We've had enough of these ideas. Now we have to move on to something else. Because then we have at another end of the dimension, individuals who are called developers. And they like to do things better. They want to improve upon a schema, but they want the schema first. They find benefits and support in structure. They accept the problem definition. They work within the stated rules. They like that. They emphasize improvement and usefulness. And they like to be seen as precise, thorough, and dependable. That's what they own as part of their personality. Now, we're not all or none on this. This is a continuum. And so people can be moderate, and they can be in the middle or sort of tugging in one direction or another, but the moderates are often peacemakers. They say, well, I could see both sides, and you could see in a group that that's very helpful. Sometimes they can't make a choice between either explorer or developer, but often they're the ones who sit there and have empathy for each of the possible styles. So there's, you could be anywhere along the continuum. Basically, you're asking questions about how do I prefer to deal with novelty and boundaries? How do I feel about and react to structure? How do I prefer to respond to authority? And how do I search for information? Searching is interesting because explorers tend to just cast this huge wide net and then figure out what it means. Whereas developers like to be methodical. They want a plan, they want an outline. How am I going to gather information? And I'd like you right now to take the poll about what you see yourself as. And this is just your first reaction. Do you see yourself more as an explorer? Do you see yourself being moderate, you're in between? Or do you see yourself more as being a developer? And to be thinking about the idea, if you have paper and pencil around, just jot down, why did you say that? Or even just think about what made you say that about yourself? What's an example of your style? So here we have 4 people in each category, well, a 5th one for developer. Often here, like many characteristics, and we have tens of thousands of people's scores on this in different fields. And what we found is eventually with all those individuals, there's a normal curve here. So you'll have fewer people be developers and then many more people be moderate, and then it tails off to fewer being developers with the bulk in the middle. We're almost nicely balanced across all 3. So you would all make a great team because you can understand each other's perspectives and add to the group by having a different perspective. So I'm going to go on to show you that for the OC, and you can think about where you stand on this, but I won't be doing a poll. There are 3 components of OC. This is the largest scale of the 3 dimensions, and there is a preference for novelty, where those who are explorers tend to like novelty more and new things, whereas the developers are saying, okay, enough, I can't have too many new things right now. Let me just focus on working on the project. We also have a dimension of a subscale of structure and authority, where, as you can guess, the explorers don't like that much structure and authority, and the developers like those parameters. And I explained about the search strategy as an area for OC, because the developers tend to just gather information. Then they'll figure out what it means. Whereas the developers tend to be people who want to have more of a plan when they dig into gathering information. All of these things you can see right off, you can see that in FPS when a team gets together. It would really be important to understand what the strengths are of the individuals on a team with respect to these areas. So we'll move on to the next dimension, but before that, to see if, does anybody have any questions about this? And I'll just give you a moment here. When at the end of the presentation, and you'll get to do another activity soon, at the end of the presentation, I can tell you how you could you could take view on your own and get the results. So you can do this in a more structured way and actually take the instrument if you like. So manner of processing has a continuum between external and internal. So when this is very similar to a lot of other instruments that you might have taken, such as the Myers-Briggs type indicator has introvert, extrovert. Important to remember here is that this is really about where you get your energy from. Do you get your energy from being around people and having a lot of activity around you? Or do you want to focus and think about things for yourself first before you might share them with others? More specifically, externals engage in a variety of tasks and discussion about possibilities. And the focus there is on discussions. They like to talk it through with people, and that's how they think. They derive energy from interacting with others. They share options freely with a broad range of people. They seek a great deal of input from others before reaching closure. And they press for action, sometimes without thought or reflection, because they're talking to others more than they're thinking about truly what the problem is about. Internals take advantage of quiet opportunities for concentration, draw energy from reflection and consideration, share options with others after having time to think them through, share options with others after establishing trust and confidence. Someone who is an internal doesn't automatically blurt out everything they're thinking about to everybody around them. They want to do it in a maybe more confidential way, and they really have to build up more trust before they open their ideas up to others. They think before acting, but sometimes they might not do the acting because they're just so busy thinking. So the main questions to ask yourself about this is, how do I prefer to manage information? Do I go out to others first, and do I need that that interaction with them? Do I need to talk with others in order to understand the info? When do I share my thinking? And does interacting with others build or spend energy? That's a really important part about being an introvert or an extrovert, because we all work with people all day long, but when you find that you need your hour-long car ride on your way home from work, okay, I'm spilling the beans here, I'm an internal. When I like my hour car drive, because it just gives me a time to think, reflect, and regroup before I get home and need to do something else. So that's what you want to think about when you put yourself on this kind of continuum. So we're going to have a poll again about external, internal, or moderate. And Debbie, if you put that up for us now. So just click on where you think you are. Interesting, we've got more of a normal curve here, not as many externals around. Internals taking over a little bit there, and moderates. And being a moderate is great in this in this context because you can see both points of view, and you're not calling the other person, you know, just a busybody by talking to other people, or thinking that somebody is just shy and not really engaging with others when they happen to be an internal. And we'll go on to the next screen if you have any questions you want to make about this. Oops, I got to get rid of that poll. Thank you. And sorry, let me check if there are any questions. Okay, I don't see any. I'm going to move along. Questions or certainly comments. And the third dimension is ways of deciding. So your preference for task concerns or personal and interpersonal needs when focusing your thinking and moving toward decisions and actions. This is interesting because what it really is pertaining to is that is what you are concerned with most when you're trying to solve a problem. So person-focused decision makers want to promote harmony and positive interpersonal relationships. When they're solving a problem, they're already thinking about how other people are going to react to a potential decision. And that might interfere with their actually going in a certain direction, because if they know it's an unpopular idea, they might not go there when maybe it should have been investigated a little more. They react to ideas as being one with the person, so they identify an idea with a person. They use criteria that are personal, sensitive to feelings. They're more subjective in being problem solvers. They consider the personal impact or consequences of a decision. They find what's good, attractive, or pleasing about an option. They seek options or decisions that all can buy into. They really want consensus because they don't want anybody's feelings to be hurt. And they put people's feelings maybe over the quality of the outcome. So let's see what the task-focused individuals are about. They focus on what is logical or rational. They react to ideas as being separate from the person. They use criteria that are authoritative, verifiable, more objective. They're not as concerned about it being related to a person or a direction or a decision. They consider standards, rigor, quality. They find what's wrong, what's lacking, or what an option needs, and they seek the best solution for a response. They put the quality of the outcome often over the people's feelings, and they're more of the kind of person that you can't please all the people all of the time, and sometimes you just have to go forward with a decision. Another example here, I'm more task focused. I'm an explorer, I'm internal, and I'm task focused. And being task focused helps me develop and get the job done because I'm not as much of a developer. When I get a problem or an idea, I just automatically can think of many possibilities. And some of them we have to get rid of them. I just brainstorm any possible thing just so I get it out of my brain. But when I write, for instance, emails, I write the email, I get everything down, and then I cannot send it until I make it more personal. I have to say, hi, how are you doing? What's going on? How are things going with you today? Oh, I understand. And I have to put all that personal stuff in there. I have to save the moment for doing that. I dare not send an email or a text or something like that without pausing and embellishing on it the personal part, because that is not how I start when I have to solve something or deal with something. But I know that about myself, so I have to take care of that. So you're always thinking about what factors get first priority when I focus on the side. Is it people, or is it the project, the task itself? Where do I start? How do I make trade-offs? So take a moment here and think, are you more person-oriented, task-oriented? Are you more moderate? And you could think about why you feel that way. So Debbie, if you could give us the poll for this. There we go. I like these polls. I like the way you can see things right away. And this has a bit of a normal curve to it, with more people being moderate, several people being tasked. I saw a couple of people smiling when I was talking about fixing the emails before I send them out. I dare not press send until it's really, really time. And I have to read through it several times and make sure I haven't offended anybody, make sure I soften it, you know, if it sounds too abrupt or blunt. And of course I have to do that, but I get the job done. I get the job done, but I try to be as responsible about being conscious of how other people are feeling. But I've had to learn that over many years. And so we'll move along here, and I'll just check if there are any questions so far. Get rid of. And everybody seems good on this. So now I'm going to explain a little bit more information about the dimensions, so that you know what's going on here. You've just grossly determined or made a decision on this continuum where you are. Okay, I'm more internal, I'm more external. Oh, I see it both ways, I'm in the middle. But if you were to take the instrument view, there are actually very specific point ranges that would determine what kind of moderate you are. You might be moderate on the side of explorer, or moderate a little bit on the side of developer. And so these are the point breakdowns for that. And we use this to determine where the students were on their teams. Now, we did not form the student teams for FPS using this information. We let the students form the teams themselves, and then gave them this information so they could use it on their teams when they're talking to each other. So this was very interesting. When I said to you, you can write down or jot down a few things about why you think you're more of an explorer, why you think you're more moderate, why you think you're more external, etc. The students did that as well. And then we related this to their actual scores after they took view. And I just will say, this is just a snapshot. We have it for all 75 students, but it is exactly validating the scores. But look at this, a well-defined explorer. I like to find new ways of solving, excuse me, problems. And here she has a low score on the continuum, indicates explorer. I really like to do things differently without structure. That's a pure explorer for sure. Here we have a developer. When given an assignment, the clearer, more specific the directions, the happier I am. You know, they don't want vagueness. They want things to be really, really clear. And they might choose to belong to a different aspect of future problem solving. They might not choose to work on GIPs. They might choose to do more, maybe do scenario writing or not. Explorer might choose to do more scenario writing because it's more open-ended. So people might choose to do things, but here all of these students were in the GIPS area of future problem solving. And as you can see, you need to know how to get along with people who have a different perspective from you. Again, here's an external. People allow me to get excited and I keep pouring out ideas. I do not work well alone. Very important to know that, but important for a team member and your other team members to know that about you, and to know how the team works together when you have maybe 3 internals and 1 external. So this was just very, very useful in our project for the students to find out how they worked best with each other. Again, I'll just finish here with a well-defined internal says, I just really like to go into quiet and really think. Well, they don't like a noisy room or a noisy space when they're trying to think through things. Here's a well-defined task person. I prefer to bounce ideas off of myself. And and we had many examples of this with respect to their being able to see their style and having it be very related to the actual score they received. And then our job was to help the students figure things out about how they work together as a team. With all 75 students involved, here was their overview of their dimensions for view. Out of all 75 students, there was only one who was person-oriented. That's very interesting. 17 who were task-oriented. So now we have to talk about how we form teams. Maybe this helps in forming teams, but it certainly helped us in having the people work together on their teams. When we got down to a team itself, so here we have teams 10, 11, and 18, and there were 4 or 5 students on a team, typically 4. You can see here we have no moderates. We have 1 explorer and 3 developers. So you have to learn how to, if you're the lone explorer on a team and you keep just spouting out ideas all the time, sometimes people just turn, they just say, okay, enough, stop it, stop. Well, they could learn nicer ways to say that and know that that is an incredible strength of that person. And that these developers and the explorer needed to learn how to work together better. Here we have all explorers and no developers on this team. So we had to figure out, okay, somebody's got to think about when you stop coming up with more ideas, or when you stop bringing in info, when you stop diverging, and when you can converge. And hopefully here, moderate explorers can bring that in. And a third example is here we have no internal people. They were all external or 1 moderate external. That may or may not be a big decision maker on a GIPS problem for FPS if you're working with that, the global issues, because you're not as much concerned about individuals and relating it to individuals. That might be more important on the community FPS project. So implications here for teamwork, we had a lot of activities to have people understand everybody else's perspective. So for instance, one of them was if you gathered a group of developers in a room and asked them to describe explorers, what words would they use? And because we know that some people just don't understand others' perspectives. And it's really important for them to do that. So this is just one of many little entrees into working with teams. And here's just stereotypes that it may be likely that all the developers think the explorers are sloppy and messy, and all the explorers think the developers are cookie cutter, get the job done, everybody's the same, let's just hurry along here. And that's not true. And so we just have to overcome different kinds of stereotypes of working with our teams. Implications for leadership. And I put this in the title because the students who were in the treatment group felt that when their style for problem solving was understood, that their values, their contributions were more valued. They just felt that way rather than anybody pushing their ideas aside. And then they were able to take turns in leading the group based on their capabilities. So leadership became something where the students took turns with their activities. And it was really, really nice to see their comments about this, that they felt valued and they felt that they were all leaders. So now I have a project for you. And what we're going to do, here are the directions. Excuse me, just so you get to feel what it might be like to be involved in one of these projects. You're going to soon, excuse me, be placed into breakout groups. You'll have approximately 6 minutes. So this is just a real mini simulation to complete the activity. When you get in a group, you can talk to each other, you unmute and talk to each other and select an observer. And this person is just going to record So it should be somebody who has a paper and pencil handy. They're just going to record what's going on in the team, what's going on in your group, about how you talk about things. Then you're going to select a spokesperson who I'll call upon at the end of your project, and a recorder who's going to write down some ideas. Maybe the spokesperson and the recorder are the same person, so that you have all of your information to be able to tell us what went on in your group. And then what I want you to do when you first come on, even though you didn't complete view per se, I want you to share what you think your tendencies are for orientation to change, that was being explorer, moderate, or developer, manner of processing, which was external, moderate, internal, or ways of deciding, which was person, moderate, or task. And what I want you to do is to develop a list of ideas for a series of commercials with red hot as the theme. It's launching a new product. I don't know what that is. That's what you decide in your group. And then you'll record your ideas. So what we're going to do is Debbie's going to put you into breakout rooms, and I might visit your breakout rooms. I could come in and see, what are you talking about? And I will leave this up on the screen so that you could see what you're doing. But so Debbie's going to put you into breakout rooms now, and then you're going to work on this project. Okay, so what happened there is I couldn't browse around to other rooms. I had a lovely chat time with Patricia and Aisha, and we had a really nice uh, session. So I'm going to ask, I think it's Aisha, to explain what we did in our group. So can you unmute yourself and tell us, tell everybody what you did?
Right, so we decided that we would have a exhibition of sorts where all the items would be red in color, that each item would be very special and unique in nature, but to encompass the red hot as well, we put like a time limit on it. So the exhibition would either travel from city to city for a very limited short period of time, or we would have a pop-up website that would only be available in certain areas for a certain period of time.
It was fun. This was an interesting group because we just had a lot of ideas, and then we ended up putting them all together with this art exhibition. So I really like the way that worked out. Patricia, can you make a comment on how we worked as a group? Can you think about how it might have related to our styles, our problem-solving styles?
Yes, it was very fun because I am an explorer and Aisha is the developer. And so I started to generate ideas and small ideas like shoes, something to wear, something to decorate. And Aisha stood with, oh, I was thinking in something that would go, that would be unique, very, very special. And then I thought, oh, I'm reminding me of my paintings. Oh, it could be like an Andy Warhol exhibition. And Aisha completed it saying, but it would be special during a small period of time. And then we started constructing and joining every ideas, kind of like a pop-up exhibition that would go all around the world. And that was it, I think so.
Nice. Thank you so much for that explanation. And I did want to point out that Patricia absolutely was not finished brainstorming. That being the explorer, yes. She said, no, I'm looking at the timer. And then she's saying, no, I want to add more ideas. And so it was perfect. It was very nice, and it was a nice group to work with. From group 2, is there a spokesperson who can tell us what you came up with for your project?
So this is Sherry, and I was the one taking notes, but I will tell you that Colleen was definitely the person who was our explorer and was really great at brainstorming. So she might actually be better telling what our ideas were, because she actually spurred most of ours. So Colleen, you want to take it away?
I could try.
Although I did write it down, didn't I? I did.
Well, maybe we could do it together.
Okay.
Are you talking about, you want me to like describe our product a little bit?
Yeah. Just what did you come up with?
Well, we came up with chili, but it would be a product that wasn't just all prepackaged. It had to involve some home cooking, and so it's kind of like combining, make it easy with this move toward healthy and going back to home cooking. And we would have, our campaign would be featuring a chili pepper family, animated family we would have different aspects of the family introduced in our series of commercials, bringing up different, now I'm having trouble, like maybe it would be the parents cooking for the kids, and there's the warmth of the family love, and then there could be the red hot where the love interest comes in at one commercial and they're trying to attract the love interest with their great chili. And the characters would change colors based on sort of, the warmth they were feeling, maybe they would get more red as they experience more love and warmth. And
what a great session.
Yeah,
it was.
You really had a nice progression of all your different ideas. Can someone in the group tell me about how you your reflections on how some of the interactions were based on what your styles were, your problem solving styles.
I don't want to say everything, but I just have to laugh because my group was quite paralyzed for the first like minute and a half because there weren't directions available on the screen, and I just thought that was pretty funny. I don't know, I can't remember all of the makeup of the group. Maybe somebody could help me, but I think we were largely, there was definitely a lot in the group who needed the very defined directions right there, because it was really horrible for everybody that there weren't directions.
Yeah, and interesting because you're probably more on the developer side, most of the people in the group, and then you have to create structure. Somebody pulls out, maybe a moderate pulls in and says, okay, here's, I think, what we can do, and you're not sure if it's right or wrong, and that makes you uncomfortable, and then you progress. So these are the types of things we would talk about in groups. How do you get started, and how do you work together given these different approaches that you have to solving a problem? Nice, thanks so much, group 2. Group 3, what did you come up with for your product? Is there a spokesperson?
Well, I guess I'll chime in. Most of our brainstorming was done by, is it Maria? I don't see your full name. Maria. Maria, okay. And her husband. He happened to be eating breakfast with her, and he was chiming in with some good ideas too. But we basically, I guess, came up with a bracelet that we combined ideas as well as some other groups, and a bracelet that people could wear that would change colors as you got closer to the hidden object that you were looking for, or the prize object, whatever. And kind of like a mood bracelet kind of thing. And we came up with that because of the game that kids play, when you're closer to an object, you're hot, or you get farther away, you're cold. And then the object they would find would be a mug that turned red hot when it had hot liquid in it, or something like that, like kind of like a thermal mug of some kind that would change colors. So that was sort of where we ended up.
Yeah, a lot of fun elaboration there. Is there something that anybody in that group noticed about how your style or the styles of others changed the dynamics, or you needed to work things out in your group, given what group 2 just said about being sort of stuck at the very beginning? Is there anything else that you notice about your group?
I would say just that, Maria definitely had tons of really awesome ideas. And if I remember correctly, she definitely said she was more of an explorer, whereas, a lot of us said we were more moderate or on the developer side. And we're able to work off of those ideas. But she really came up with like some really great original ideas as well.
Yeah, and you need to learn what your strengths are, and you need to know how to bridge when something isn't your strength. And that's what's really important about understanding here. People who have lots of ideas might have to learn how to do this and then keep writing them down. Because when you have kids and they're working in a group and one person just wants all their ideas to be heard by everybody else, sometimes that they have to learn how to work with others when they have all of these great ideas. And as you know, for the GIPS problem solving, you have a 2-hour limit to finish a booklet. And you have to be careful and practice that, and diplomatically find a way in your practicing, let this other person know that it's time now to converge. And because you understand this and learn ways to talk to each other, given your style, and that's the whole point of this process, then you can complete your booklet more efficiently.
Another thing, I'm sorry to interrupt you, Marcy,
ahead,
but one of the things that I also would like to echo in there, or at least bring up is the fact that with my groups, I find that they begin to rely on that explorer as opposed to developing their own explorer side. And that is something that I'm working with my students on. And it's sometimes that's difficult because they have that crutch and they recognize each other's strengths, and then they don't develop their own side of that. So
right. Because I mean, the explorer can feel like taken advantage of. Oh, you just want me, for all these ideas, and they you have to learn how to stretch, and that's also the point of a coach, is to help people stretch and to help the students figure themselves out. So we had one more group, right? We had 4 groups. So let's talk about Beth wants to talk, I think. You have to unmute yourself, Beth.
I'm excited about our product because as Kathy and I were talking about at the start, and Brenda listened in real closely, we had just been dealing with our dogs. And where I am in Florida, the other day we had 12 inches of rain. Yesterday we had only 2. So we were just talking about dealing with dogs. And then Brenda chimed in that we really should come up with a dog related product. And then I thought about, and Kathy too, about how our dogs are always like wet and muddy when they come in. So some kind of way to clean a dog. And then Brenda suggested a dog door that did like cleaning and drying as the dog ran in. And that just an awesome idea. And then the dog, it would also have like a mat, like AstroTurfy, to clean the paws off, and a sensor on the door handle that Brenda came up with, because she's an awesome explorer, about that you could trigger to tell if the dog was dirty or not, and whether it would need cleaning or not. And then finally, like, we just kept popping ideas out all along the way. A treat dispenser, like when the dog came in and was successfully cleaned. Also, what I loved, and I think, Brenda, did you suggest this, or Kathy, that it would need to be quiet and not a noisy dog washer dryer, because dogs can be startled. So I love that perspective of thinking about the psychological health of the dog as it gets clean. And then that we would have it, that machine would be red hot, cleans the spot. Kathy, you had a really good commercial, like saying in the middle. What was that? Oh, unmute yourself.
Unmute.
Yeah.
I was still thinking about it. We could use it, put it to the song Celebrate. Keep your dog spotless and clean with this red hot amazing machine.
Wow. This is really, you've really gone far. I had an image of like a car wash for dogs, some kind of little thing, or maybe bigger, depending upon.
Yeah,
that's what we do too.
How much fun is that? That's great. So what are some things you noticed for anyone on that team? What are some things you noticed about the way that people responded based on their style?
Brenda, what do you think?
Well, I'm definitely an explorer to get started, but I also like to piggyback off of other people's statements and their ideas. It's when we greeted each other, the dog, I first said, let's create a dog biscuit. And then that went into a dog dryer, a dog robotic walker. And so everybody was freewheeling off of each other's ideas. And as we went along, I realized that some of the things that came up, we all had, I think we're all moderates in the other areas, because we all had developing ideas, and it was just really a dynamic group to work with. And everybody was very willing to listen to each other. And Kathy's definitely the creative force when it comes to, we would do this as a cartoon and have the different perspectives of the owner versus the dog, and how that would be presented in our commercial to sell the product.
I just think that I've lost my slide where I'm at. Apologize here.
That's okay.
Something just clicked out. But I really like the way you've all embraced this. And we do these kinds of activities with students all the time. What we haven't done is really added in these 3 dimensions and talk about, well, what do we do about them, either because somebody feels like that's all that the group wants them to do, or because it's something that they might need to develop. So we've gone through, did we get to all the groups? Because I know we're running out of time. So what I did want to say is one of the things, our conclusion for this project was that problem-solving performance by team members can be improved through direct instruction and problem solving, particularly when there is a focus on group dynamics. And the students who were in the treatment group of this study were very, very reflective on what they learned about themselves and how they learned to meet with the work in their groups. And we believe that that was part of why they were so successful at the state competitions and even going on to the international competitions. So if you were interested in more about VIEW and you wanted more information about using it for yourself or your teams, you can go on to www.viewassessment.com. If you wanted to take it and complete it and get some feedback, because I'm a trained VIEW user, you can also contact me if you want some additional info. I can work with the folks who produce it to get it for you to try it out at a reasonable to no cost. So you can contact me at marcydelcourt@gmail.com. And I want to thank you all for your interactions, and it might be time for your morning coffee, tea, or something like that. I love these animated pieces that I found somewhere online, this coffee cup steaming. So I'd like to thank all of you for your time and participation, and please feel free to contact me if you have additional questions. I think that we have some information that April wants to give to the group, and then we're going to sign off.
Well, I have very important information, and that is the information of appreciation to you, Marcy, and a big thank you, not only for your support of future problem solving over the years, but also the work that you're doing to share creative and critical thinking with our students, promoting the highest level of education possible. And we really appreciate you taking the time to be with us today. I know you have a very busy schedule, but you're doing amazing work, and we are just very appreciative.
Well, thanks, April. And I've just clicked out of my area here because I lost the picture. But thank you all for participating. You've come from far and wide, even though you're in your homes, and we really appreciate all of your thoughtfulness about working with our students with FPSPI.
Thank you, Marcy. We do have a question whether the slides will be available for reference later.
They can be, and I could set that up with April in some way if you want that. Absolutely. So they could be available to you, and I'll put up any other resources. The article for the work that Laura and I have done that was produced, and I can put a link up to that.
Excellent. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Thank you. This has been amazing. I love this one. This is Brenda.
Okay, great, Brenda. Thanks for tuning in from Kentucky. I'm here in Connecticut, by the way, just so we know where some of us are from. So take care, folks. Thank you.
Thanks, Marcy.
Okay.
There we go.